Thanks, everyone, for coming out. I am Michael Schneider from Variety, and I am so excited for this one. So I'm not going to waste any more time. You know him. You love him. He is the host of Late Night with Seth Meyers, the one and only Seth Meyers.
Hi, everybody. Hello, Mike. Thank you for having me. It's so wonderful to be here. And this beautiful theater that I've been lucky enough to perform at, I think 2 or 3 times over the years. This is a really special town, and it's a very special place. So thank you for having me.
I was going to ask you if you've done the Paramount before.
I have done the Paramount before. I've done Moon Tower at least twice. It's a great comedy festival. And in fact, I think when I was first starting to put together Dad Man Walking, my special that came out last year, I think this was one of the first places that I tried the material. So
FYC, by the way.
FYC.
For your consideration.
For your consideration.
Dad Man Walking. We'll do that throughout the evening.
I do wonder, here's a question. If you're not in showbiz, be honest, do you know what FYC means? Because we sometimes make FYC jokes. I mean, if you're in show business, you know FYC means for your consideration. But like, why would somebody not in show business? Nobody else uses that expression.
But maybe they should. Maybe that's what the kids are saying now. The Gen Zers, it's, yo, that's FYC.
Or my son's like, I'd love to be on the soccer team, FYC.
It's the new bet.
Yeah, exactly.
So what is your relationship with Austin? How often have you been down here? And do you ever have time to, get some barbecue?
I'm going to tell you, I was here a month and a half ago for a bar mitzvah and got deep into some barbecue.
That sounds
They say
dirty.
if you're going to have barbecue, come to Austin. And they almost never say if you're going to go to a bar mitzvah, come to Austin. And yet the two for me convened.
That sounds like a hot bar mitzvah.
It was a bar mitzvah.
I like it.
No, nobody steal that.
You're already working new material for the next special.
I love a good portmanteau. Yeah. By the way, there's only one reason I know the word portmanteau. Somebody yell out what? Crossword, 100%. That's it. The New York Times crossword. So we're a man of the people, right? I'm really connecting. I'm talking about my New York Times crossword, portmanteaus, coming up with portmanteaus off the top of my head.
Yeah, from FYC to New York Times, yeah. Has everyone finished their Wordle for today? Yeah? All right.
Can I tell you my Wordle story?
Let's hear a Wordle story.
My Wordle story is I walk my boys to school and I allow them to do Wordle with me on the walk. Because I think it would be rude if I was a dad just looking at my phone while I was with my kids. But if all 3 of us are looking at the phone, that's parenting. And the other day, I guess it was my 9-year-old goes, I got a word, but it's only 4 letters. And I said, what is it? And he said, fuck. And I said, Jesus. And he goes, is that 5? And I was like, yes, but it's a proper name.
I love the Wordle chunk. So you may have noticed we came out with beverages.
Yep. We're celebrating the fact that it's an evening.
Cheers to the night drinking.
Cheers to Austin. Cheers to having a cocktail on a Thursday night.
As we should. But how can you not when you're night drinking with Seth Meyers?
I mean, yeah.
So what are you drinking there, by the way? What is your drink of choice?
I'm drinking a Negroni. Yeah, thank you very much. Make some noise if you're a jackal. Yeah, my people. My Negroni is my drink of choice during FYC. Yeah. Corrections, which is...
for your corrections, yes.
For your corrections, yeah. Corrections, for those of you who don't know, and at this point, I cannot comprehend why you don't know. Corrections started during the pandemic shows, but basically every Thursday after the audience leaves, I record a YouTube video that's anywhere from like 10 to 15 minutes where I address every mistake I have made over the course of the week. And I only know about the mistakes because online commenters have left it under the YouTube videos. And I call them jackals, the people who leave the comments. And it's really fun because I'm play acting that I'm frustrated by their comments, and they are in turn play acting that they're frustrated by my mistakes. And it's this, to be genuine for a moment, it's this incredible crowdsourced piece of comedy that happened very organically that I look forward to a great deal.
Yeah. No, it's your favorite thing now.
It's literally my favorite thing to do. And the network keeps saying to me, but why? Why is the YouTube only thing your favorite part of the show we're paying you to do?
Well, we will get back to that. We do
Great.
have a little bit of structure here.
I like how unstructured we are, Mike. Live a little. We're not in LA anymore, Mike.
Have a sip.
Yeah.
Have another sip.
I'm going to have another sip, yeah.
We've got a couple of clips we're going to show folks and talk a little bit more. So why don't we cue up? We've got some day drinking to share with the kids.
Really fun.
I mean, you do a decent Neeson, I think.
Paul has an exceptionally good Irish accent.
It's pretty good.
It's really, the very funny thing is, thankfully, you set that up as being a clip from Day Drinking. We did an event just in LA. What is it called? The MTP, you know what I'm talking about?
The Motion Picture Television Fund. It's
a wonderful place that is basically a retirement community for people who are in the entertainment industry, and it was an exceptional panel. That time, the moderator said, let's watch a clip. No setup. And I thought, if the people here don't watch the show, they'd be like, what's wrong?
What is going on?
Because we're not drinking in the clip. So you just are like, this is the show?
Right. And they seem to be a little inebriated. What's going on?
It was the best. And I will say, of everybody we've ever done day drinking with, the alcohol had to do the least amount of work for Paul Rudd, who's immediately just so funny and fast.
And he does, so he downs a Guinness for comedic effect immediately, but then you see like that, how quickly it impacted him.
Yes, it was incredible. I will say though, shout out to Paul and I, for men of our age, it was the first time when day drinking was over, Paul was like, you want one more? And I was like, yeah.
That's pretty strong.
Also, Paul knows how to pour a Guinness. He can like properly pour a Guinness, because the Irish bartender, I think, so impressed with Paul's accent, was like, would you like to pour your own Guinness? And Paul was like, yeah. Very cool dude.
No, I'm impressed even after all of that, all the concoctions that you made for him, particularly the bridesmaid one, or the whatchamacallit, the one with the pickles and the...
Yeah, what was the pickles one? Now I can't even remember what the dumb jokes were.
Someone will remember.
Anyway, yeah. But we made a lot of terrible drinks, and he's a very good sport. And it's a very fun thing. The only problem with day drinking, and ever since Rihanna did it, a lot of people want to do it.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to have a late night talk show bit where people want to do it. The problem is I've only got the one liver.
Yeah. And you've been doing this now for 10 years.
10 years. I mean, I think, and we both went to a Midwestern college in the binge drinking 90s. So like, I feel like I got some I'm ready for it. But at some point, Father Time's undefeated,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, have you found a new recipe to cure those hangovers?
No.
Using like the L-cysteine?
You know what the hangover cure is? Good content.
FYC.
I will say, it is the funniest thing about day drinking is anyone here who's ever gotten as drunk as we get in day drinking. You know that thing where you wake up the next morning, you're like, oh God, what did I do? What did I do? Like, imagine if you're thinking that, and then an hour after that, your editor's like, we have a first cut.
And how often do you watch that first cut and say, oh, I said that?
So, a lot. Well, the most famous one is that for Kevin Hart. Kevin and I we built, the entire floor was a Jumanji board game. And the last thing we were going to do was roll these giant dice and play a Jumanji drinking game. And we were so drunk by the time we got to the last thing that I think I rolled the dice, and then Kevin Hart just tackled me. And like it was that thing of like all the fun. We were having so much fun, but all the fun had gone out of everyone else's eyes. And even when you're drunk, you're like, "Hey, it was a party," because my director like walked over, and was like, "I think we're good. I think we're good for the day." And the next when I saw the cut, I was like, "Why is the Jumanji thing not in it?" And they were all like, "It's bad." And then I remember Kevin called me the morning after, basically to be like, "Fuck you, fuck your show." And I said, "Do you remember we did Jumanji?" He's like, "We did not do Jumanji." But it's really, I will make my incredible producer and dear friend Mike Shoemaker has to watch the first cut of Day Drinking and come in and say, "It's fine. You're not going to go in a shame spiral."
Right. This is not an intervention just yet. But you mentioned before how Dua Lipa, of course, was perhaps the most intense one of the bunch.
But do not besmirch my queen's dignity. No, Dua is great, and I only say this because we did talk about it. She came on the show afterwards to talk about how it went. Dua, to her credit, was like, because we'll say to the guests, like, we can water down shots. And she was like, "You don't have to worry about me." And then about halfway through it, I just remember somebody on her team was like, "Just a few more minutes. Dua just needs a minute." And then it was like, "Just a few more minutes." And then it was like, "Dua's gone home." And I'm glad she did. Yeah. It's at some point you have to be like, this isn't for me anymore. But it was still, even then it was really great. It's a bummer because the thing I'm so jealous of my friend James Corden because he came up like I think I'm as good at drinking as James is at singing. But the thing about singing is your doctor is never like, "You gotta cool it. You gotta stop singing in cars. You're gonna kill yourself."
There's some people who may say that, though, but...
Yeah, maybe, but I don't know. We're going to run it back this summer. We've got another one on the books, so...
Ooh.
Yeah. I'm not going to say.
No?
Yeah, I'm not going to say.
Now, you mentioned that it's a lot easier now to get people to do this.
Yes.
But are they still surprised when they realize, "Oh, no, I actually do have to drink"?
No matter how much we stress to them that it's real, I think they're surprised at how real it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, we're doing it with people who only have a couple hours. If you were actually, the amount of alcohol we drink would never be healthy over any course of hours, but like we're doing it in like 2 hours. And so when you only have 2 hours, you got to get to drunk faster than is okay. So the beginnings are real like go, 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 go. I think sometimes, and early on we did it with people, like Ina Garten, where the expectation was Ina Garten's not going to get plowed.
Well, we've seen plenty of the Barefoot Contessa over the years. She enjoys a few.
She enjoys a little. She enjoys a glass of wine. She doesn't enjoy tequila and a pickle served out of a boot.
Maybe she does.
Yeah, maybe. Well, yeah.
Now she does. So we mentioned how this has been a segment for 10 years, but of course you're celebrating 11 years.
Yeah.
In late night.
What a trip. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Hey, can you believe that?
No.
I mean,
the whole thing, the entirety of my career has been spent on one floor of one office building. And so the whole thing is incredibly surreal. I have an ID that is the photo I took in 2001 when I got hired at SNL. And I get a pretty withering look from the security guards when it comes up on their screen. I think they're like, it might be time to update it. But I was talking to someone recently. I'm a couple years away from being in 30 Rock for as many years as I was not working in 30 Rock. I was 27 years old when I started. I'm 51. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I've spent more hours in this building than I've spent in my childhood home, in my, anywhere, any one place I've lived in New York City. And it's a very surreal feeling. But at the same time, I feel so lucky because I do think that 30 Rock represents kind of one of the last bastions of this is where show business happens. And it's still very cool to be down the hall from SNL as well. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's everyone knows what 30 Rock is. And
Yeah,
the
I
show
mean,
helped,
I
but-
think, I think everybody knew, and then I think there was a gigantic assist for a whole new generation from Tina Fey when she named the show that.
Yeah.
And, but it was like, oh, good. Like somebody is reminding people like, yep, there's this beautiful Art Deco building in the middle of New York City. And, there's floors where there's lawyers and there's floors where there's investment bankers. And then there's like a floor where Jimmy Fallon's across the hall from Kelly Clarkson, and I'm directly above Jimmy, and down the hall from me is SNL, and it's really crazy.
So do you
I remember because I used to sleep in my office when I worked at SNL on Tuesday nights because that's the writing night, and sometimes Wednesday morning I would like wake up and I would just be like doing my final changes on my scripts, and the Today Show would often have live music. And I went from like this young comedy writer to like the oldest man in New York City who was like working and would like walk over to my window and want to like scream out like, keep it down, Bon Jovi.
I say you and Al Roker now are probably the longest serving.
No, again, I was talking to Shoemaker again recently and I was like, do I get like a watch at year 25? Because he's been in the building since the 80s. And he said, like, no, they give you like a list and they're like, you can have like a bike. You can have, they will give you a hat, but it's not. I kind of wanted a nice gold watch, but it doesn't seem like that.
They all have a peacock on them.
Yeah, no, it's like, yeah, do you want a Today Show hoodie?
Yeah, you're like, still got Matt Lauer's face on it. I don't know if that's...
Yeah. Now it just looks like a guy. They like...
So do you ever go back and watch those early episodes? Have you at some
Of
point?
mine?
Yeah.
No.
No?
No. I mean, it's a good question, but no. I don't want to see myself in the early years of my show because I remember how I felt. And it's really nice now to have a looseness that unfortunately for me, and I think there may be some performers who could just start feeling loose. Like I had to earn the right to be loose. So the first year and a half, at least, of the show was this real effort to be competent, which is not thrilling to go back and watch. But for me, it was this real necessary step to just show like, you haven't made a terrible mistake by choosing me for this show. Well, I can also appreciate that you might not be thinking you made the right choice. And so it was working through that and getting to the place that I'm at now, which is, I really can't wait for that hour of the day. Like it is whether I'm under the weather or maybe, I'm feeling down about something. Like when you walk out to do a show that you've worked on all day and there's an audience who came to see that show, it's really exciting and great.
So what yeah. Sure. So take us through your workday. So you after you're done with Wordle in the morning with the kids, then you get to the office.
Go straight to the bar, and then I roll in like 2 minutes before the show starts. No, I go straight to the office, and we have this wonderful writer, Sal Gentile, who we couldn't live without, who writes A Closer Look.
Yep.
And it's really, I don't think there's any late night writer who carries a bigger load than Sal. Who does the entirety of A Closer Look, and also our head writer, Alex Bays, who is an incredible monologue joke writer. They are just fantastic, and I'm so lucky to have them. But Sal writes the first draft of A Closer Look, and it's long. It's like 25, 30 pages, which, compared to an SNL sketch, which is usually 10 pages. And it makes sense, because A Closer Look oftentimes can be 15 minutes. It's the entirety of the first act of the show. And then I have this luxury of somebody having done the hard part, and then I just go through and write jokes. And he's built this like really sort of architecturally strong sketch, and you can just layer stuff on top of it, and it can be a salient point, or it can be a dumb impression, or it can be a crazy tangent. And we've really given ourselves permission, because oftentimes what we're talking about is maybe hard to swallow as an audience because it's very real and the repercussions are very serious. We're like, let's also be silly. Like, let's do this in a way that is joyful so that, it can be cathartic for us to do and also cathartic for people to watch.
Is there a routine that you go through? Is there anything that kind of gets you like jazzed for the show every day?
do like to go say hello to the guests. Different people have different protocols. For example, Letterman never said hi to the guests before the show, and I've had Letterman on my show twice, and he knows I say hello ahead of time, and both times he's made it clear he doesn't want to see me before the show. Like and Kimmel's the same way. I think some people believe like, oh, I want to see you the first time on camera. Like I want, whereas I like, and I think part of it is like coming up through SNL, and a lot of these people like I met as hosts, and I like to, ask them the questions I'm not going to ask them on camera. Oftentimes like, how's it going? Are you doing well? How's your family? And that's just a nice thing to do. And again, I kind of can't believe I have a show where, on any given night, 2 or 3 people are like, who I respect and admire come through our studio.
Yeah. And since you do so much podcasting too, you also, I'm sure, have that feeling of like, you don't want to pre-banter. You don't want to like use up too much of the material. So
but again, like I think the thing I like about a dressing room before the show is, there's obviously certain things people aren't going to say on camera. And I like, again, they're just people are doing work that I'm fascinated by. And sometimes I'll go back and be like, how was it really? And like sometimes people are like, no, it was great. Or sometimes people are like, it was really hard. Like, the final product was great, but the process was really hard. And, I'm not going to, burn that out on stage. But, it's really crazy to be in a situation like mine to actually talk about, the work that you love as an audience member. Because I do still, consider myself an audience member as well. Like I do still love watching TV or films, and to be able to meet those people is really cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then you've got your audience as well, and I'm sure that's evolved over the years as they've gotten to know you.
Yes.
And how what's that vibe been like? That of evolution.
I would say that if there was an inflection point about my relationship with the audience, it was COVID, where obviously a terrible time, but the silver lining was I'm doing the show in my attic, and I had this, because again, when I do my show in my studio, like it's hard as a performer not to think about the 180 people who are in the room with you. And then all of a sudden I'm doing the COVID show and I'm realizing, oh no, the actual audience are the people who are watching at home. And so I'm stuck in my house doing a show into an iPad. And it occurs to me that most people are watching the show on an iPad. And so I felt closer to them than I'd ever felt before. And then we just sort of started building like dumb lore, like during the pandemic, like I just had this realization, like every bookshelf, there was so much bookshelf work during the pandemic. We're just looking, and everybody's reading bookshelves. And The Thornbirds is a book that like everybody, like if you grew up in the 70s or 80s, like every parent had The Thornbirds. And so I got a copy of The Thornbirds and I just had it on my desk. And then like 2 weeks later, I was like, oh, I'm going to have, my prop department just make me like anagram titles of The Thornbirds. So then I would just change the title every day. And like, I was like, again, it's not to get a laugh. It's just like to go to YouTube and have people be like, I saw what you did. and so like that kind of, when we came out of COVID, there was this real, hey, I feel like we're closer with our audience than we've ever been. And let's try to maintain that closeness. And part of that is, I don't know, like playing to the height of their intelligence, which is, I think most people who watch a show like mine or any of the late night hosts watch it consistently. And so if they're there consistently, you can have a week-long runner. You can call back a bit from a month ago. And sometimes it doesn't work in the room because, sometimes our audience has some tourists, people who just wanted to see a show. But the people watching at home are the ones who want to watch your show. And so sometimes we give ourselves permission to just play to them.
So you hear that laughter in your head. You're like, this is killing in Peoria right now.
I'm just like, I know there's 4 people online that this is going to crush with, and they're going to be the first ones in the YouTube comments to say it. Yeah.
At the end of the show, when you say goodnight, the credits roll, what's the feeling? Is it a relief or is okay, onward?
Oh, very onward. And again, I want to keep bringing them up, but Shoemaker early on said, we're never going to do a post-mortem after the show. Like when the show's over, everybody's going to go home. Because if you said, like, after the show, I just want to do a meeting about the show, like, it would just take, like, then there's all the work we do is towards the show starting. And if you just have a meeting afterwards, it could go half an hour, 90 minutes, and his thing was, if you're mad about something, if it was actually bad, you'll be mad tomorrow and we can talk about it. But the reality is, like, you come in the next day and you just want to talk about the new show. And so we don't sort of wallow in anything that goes wrong because we really appreciate we get to go back to it tomorrow.
Yeah. And you've got new fans or new guests to fan out on. And
yeah, no, when I started the show, I would be, if we had a bad show at the end of the week, I would think about it all weekend because I had come up through SNL where if you had a bad show on Saturday, you should think about it all weekend. Like, you had a whole fucking week and then you eat shit and you're just like, oh my God, what's wrong with us? But with this show, I don't think anybody on the weekend is like, God, I think something's wrong with Seth. That Thursday show stunk. And so once I gave myself permission to just like forward, it's a better show.
So when you have that bad show at SNL, is Lorne's voice in your head all weekend or?
Yeah. My favorite story is one time I was walking down, this is a bad habit I have, but I was walking down the street in New York and I was talking to myself. And coming the other direction was John Mulaney, also talking to himself. So we literally look up and we see that we're both talking to ourselves. And Mulaney goes, Lorne? And I go, yeah. We were literally both having an argument with Lorne in our heads that was so intense, we were both like.
And you still see Lorne all the time.
I do,
right?
yeah.
So...
No, I have nothing. Again, my affection for Lorne has never been higher. But it is funny, like the way I felt about Lorne, I'd never felt about anybody else. Like his power. It's like someone being like, no, Cruella and I are good now. Yeah. We're good now. Yeah. I understand now those dogs were assholes.
And the coat looks great.
But no, at some point, and again, by the way, like my relationship with Lorne has been very strong at like it only took us like 6 years. By the way, I was genuinely being like, after 6 years, we were good. But I remember the nicest thing Lorne ever said to me, which I don't think he meant it to be nice, is I was head writer, but I was also doing Weekend Update. And we'd had a few bad shows in a row. And also, I had felt like Update had been bad. And I went into his office on a Monday trying to get ahead of it. And I said, hey, I have some ideas for how we can fix Update. And he said, Update's the least of my problems. And I genuinely...
I want to hear it in Lorne's voice.
Update's the least of my problems. And then I never felt so seen. I was like, the least? And like, that's kind of how, again, like you have to you teach yourself to receive compliments from Lorne. But it was a compliment. Like, he was great.
So what was SNL 50 like?
What a thing. What a thing to be a part of. Almost like too big to fully wrap my head around. I think you've never been in a room where you just like look and you see all these people that you like love and respect, and you can just tell like everybody's like going through their own memory hole about both the good times and the bad. And it wasn't like the thing about that week, it wasn't all good. Like I definitely had some like dark moments.
Do tell.
No, it was like personally like that thing of when you feel your worst at SNL, it's like, do they need me? Am I serving a purpose?
It's amazing that you, Seth Meyers.
I know, but I did. And by the way, I talked to people who are even more important to this show than I was who felt that way. Like we were all going through it. And yet when it was over, it was like what SNL always is. Like everybody's stressed all week. And then at the after party, everybody's in a great mood because they're like, I can't believe we pulled that off. And so it was truly an incredible thing to be a part of, especially, again, I don't think I'm the first generation, but I'm kind of close to the first generation where not only did I grow up on the show, but my parents grew up on the show. So like those of us that came up that way, it was that crazy thing of when I told my parents, like, hey, remember that show you used to watch? I'm on it now. Like, and so it was crazy then to be there at year 50 and just, again, and the show's basically the same age as me. And so it's a lot to process.
Yes. Did you watch a lot of SNL growing up as a
Constantly.
kid? Yeah.
I watched it on Saturday, and then, they were always running repeats of the, 70s shows every night that I would watch. My brother and I used to watch it and tape it. And then when my parents woke up on Sunday morning, we would show them the 2 or 3 sketches that we thought they'd like.
Oh, you were YouTube before YouTube.
I was YouTube before you. And in fact, when I was on the show, sometimes my parents would be like, is it good now? And I'm like, I only showed you the good stuff. I'm like, you didn't know it was always bumpy.
Right. So you were big on SNL. What about talk shows? Were you watching much in terms of Letterman or?
We were a Letterman family, but we were never as intensely a Letterman family as we were an SNL family. But I do remember, you probably remember better, when Letterman took over the CBS 1130, I remember that the entire summer, my family, we would tape it and watch it in the morning. And it was, summer of 93, like thereabouts?
Yeah, 93, 94.
And so, but we were a real Letterman family. But SNL was our show.
Yeah. So was that the spark? Before you went to college, were you thinking like that's sort of?
I went to college thinking I would be a filmmaker, and then the new student week of my freshman year, I saw the Meow Troupe, which is the improv troupe at Northwestern University, and I was just like, oh, I want to do that. And it's crazy to say like that changed my life, but that changed my life.
Well, so you said the magic word Northwestern. We got some Wildcats in the house.
There we go.
Oh, we got a couple. All right. So we went to school around the same time.
Yep.
So back in the day, this is before the internet because we are now ancient, apparently. Yep. They actually passed out Facebooks. It wasn't thefacebook.com. It wasn't facebook.com. It was a printed.
Well, it's so funny you mention this because we also, the same time we were at school, Catherine Hahn was at Northwestern, the great Catherine. And she was just on Jimmy Fallon, and he showed her Facebook photo. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's what they used to look like. Yeah.
Well, let's show yours now from 1992.
Yeah.
There he is all the way at the end.
Yeah. What did I say I liked?
Yeah, what was your thing?
Baseball and film. So the same.
Baseball and film. Yeah, so it hasn't changed that much.
Yeah. It's so funny when you think of what a Facebook page is now. And our Facebook was like, where are you from? 2 things you like.
Yeah. Look how clean cut you are. Look at that hair.
I know. By senior year, it was a whole different thing.
Well, then let's look at senior year. Let's go to the next one. So we also have from, So something happened. College happened, apparently.
College happened. It was a good time. I'd love to run that back.
That's mullet-tastic.
Is it weird that I'm more embarrassed by the tie?
You're.
That was the summer I played youth hockey in Canada.
Summer of 96, you graduated?
I did, yeah.
So. And then how soon was it that at that point you'd done Meow Show?
Yep.
So at that point you kind of knew this is...
I knew what I wanted to do, yeah. And so I went to Chicago and I was doing improv in Chicago. And then I guess not even a year after I graduated, my friend Pete Gross and I, who also went to Northwestern and is a wonderful improviser and comedy writer, we auditioned for a improv troupe in the Netherlands called Boom Chicago.
So fascinated by this. I hear you guys talk about Boom Chicago all the time, like it was this mythical, just like you all moved to Amsterdam?
We moved to Amsterdam. It was awesome. But like, it was also crazy. Like my friend Pete was like, hey, and again, they were Chicago guys who thought a second city type improv theater would work in Amsterdam because there's a lot of tourists and the Dutch speak really good English. What they missed on was that the Dutch have like a good sense of humor. But they started this theater, and it was only about the third year of the theater, and they came to Chicago, and they were having auditions, and Pete and I were basically just waiters, and we thought, well, why not? We'll just go for a lark. And then all of a sudden we got hired and had to move to Amsterdam. I didn't have a passport. I remember having to go get a passport and move to Amsterdam. And I remember I did two things in one day where I was like, well, I'm going to go to Europe. In my head, it was like Switzerland. I'm like, I'm going to buy some hiking boots. And then I'm like, and then I'll buy a book about Amsterdam. And so I bought the hiking book, and literally the first page is like flattest country in the world. I'm like, fuck. But I already got the boots. But yeah, it was amazing. Like, I was there for 2 years. And the thing isn't just that I worked with like the most incredible improvisers. Everybody I worked with, we all had one thing in common, which is we were willing to take the risk of moving to Amsterdam. So it wasn't just funny people. It was like funny people who were willing to do something that sounded crazy to a lot of people in Chicago at the time. And I met so many dear friends there, and so many of them continue to do incredible work. And again, we're all going back this summer. We're all in a text chain, and it's some of the closest friends of my life.
That's amazing. So you guys still like go back there? You still perform?
We go back. Our friends who started the theater are having their 25th wedding anniversary, and a lot of us were at their wedding when it happened because that's how old I am. And but it's great, and it's people like Ike Barinholtz and Jason Sudeikis and Amber Ruffin and Joe Kelly and Brendan Hunt, who created Ted Lasso. The Cold Town Improv Theater right here in town, Boom Chicago. Boom Chicago, run and started by Dave Buckman, who's one of my dear friends, and it's a truly great group of people.
Yeah, and so how did that kind of inform from there, where you wanted to go and coming back to the States?
I was really lucky. My comedy partner at the time, a dear friend of mine named Jill Benjamin, she did say after 2 years, like, we got to go back. Like, there's,
we're going to die.
She was like, there's a low ceiling here for like what you can accomplish as an American comedian in Amsterdam. Yeah. And she was very right. But we came back and we started doing a 2-person show in Chicago. And that is the show that SNL saw. So it all happened pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
27 when I started on SNL. How about that?
What do you think about that 27-year-old now? And it's the classic question of, what would you tell that kid?
People ask me that question. I'm so happy with how it turned out that the last thing I would do is like risk giving advice to that fucking moron. Like, I can't believe he pulled this off. So like, what am I gonna do? Go back and be like, hey,
just don't fuck it up.
Like I want to plant that in his head. It's like, if you don't fuck this up, you get late night. I'll be like, what? Because again, until I got late night, I never thought it was a possibility. I found the first time I thought about me doing it was the day I found out I was doing it.
Well, I got to say, I mean, Weekend Update changed everything, right? Because
yes.
if you go back to like your IMDb or to your Wikipedia, there's a long list of impressions that you did on SNL.
Not one memorable. Yeah.
But you did quite a few. I mean, you did John Kerry, Michael Caine, Anderson Cooper, Carrot Top.
Yeah, nobody out. Do you notice this, the absence of woos?
Like, yeah, I remember your Brian Williams. That was a good Brian Williams.
That's all fine. Again, like almost nothing has gotten 3 woos tonight, minimum.
So, I mean, Weekend Update, though, changed. That's what
Weekend Update changed everything.
Everything.
Yeah. And, again, I was so lucky to do it with Amy Poehler like that. To ride on her coattails was, the best lift you could possibly get. And once you do that, like, you can kind of settle down. I also think like getting Weekend Update made me a better writer because I got to stop writing for me and I got to start writing for other people. And any writer gets better if you're not trying to crack an impossible problem like, what's Seth good at? And all of a sudden you're like, well, I know what Bill Hader's good at, and I know what Forte's good at, and Sandberg's good at, and Fred's good at. Sudeikis is good at. And then you start writing for other people, and like everybody's like, hey, you're good at this part. And so it was nice. Those are my happiest years of the show, where I was, I got to be head writer and I got to do Weekend Update, and I finally got to stop worrying about me as a sketch performer.
That's a great skill then, to move over into late night and then have your own group of writers.
It's the best. I mean, definitely when everybody's like, what's your, do you have any writing advice? My answer is always like, get a full staff. Get a full staff to do the first part.
But a good staff.
A good staff.
You have a good staff.
But weirdly though, the best thing SNL taught me vis-a-vis doing a late night show is that nothing's as hard as SNL. So even though when you start a late night, if you started a late night show, from a different place, I think it would be terrifying. But I started a late night show thinking like, well, at least I don't have to be up till 5 a.m. on Saturday night, and so we went into it being like, this is something we can wrap our head around.
Yeah. No, and obviously they saw something in you, and Lorne saw something in you to give
I've always said Lorne has this like habit where when he gives you information, it's like a follow-up conversation to a call you never had. So people are like, what was it like the day you found out you got late night? And I was like, I didn't understand. He called me, and I knew that like Jimmy was taking the Tonight Show, and I knew late night was open, but it never even occurred to me. And he called me and he was like, so I think you'll be good at it. He's like, it'll take time, but you'll find your voice. And I'm like, what is this? And it was so in life, you want to think you get a call like that and you hang up the phone, you're like, yes. But instead I was like, what?
Yeah, I can imagine with Lorne Michaels, it's not being asked to do something, it's you're doing this.
Yeah. I've never seen Lorne do this.
Freeze frame.
I do want to say something lovely about Lorne, which is the nicest thing I got to do in the SNL 50th was my favorite thing at SNL, which was basically just serving as setup for my more talented colleagues. But I got to do a Weekend Update bit where Vanessa and Fred played Lorne's friends from growing up, which is a bit they'd only done for like dictators. It was like, Putin's friends from growing up, and they, we thought, oh, it'd be funny to do it for Lorne. And I've never watched Lorne watch something from the audience, but he was sitting in the audience for the SNL 50th. And Fred and Vanessa are two performers that Lorne is completely taken with. Lorne loves their vibe so much. And so they were doing this bit about how they grew up with Lorne and how Lorne's like super shitty to them. And Lorne was laughing so hard. And it was so fun to remember that Lorne loves comedy. He loves it. And it was the best was they had a bit about how Lorne like fat shamed them. And it was like, do you guys want a sandwich? And we're like, and I watched Lorne, and he did a thing that was so funny to me from Lorne. He goes, no. I watched him in the audience. And it was the best. And I was like, oh, this is the best part of the 50th was like just being able to watch Lorne love them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's so great. And I love, you're talking about writing and the skills that you learned there. And of course, your amazing writing team. You talked about Sal Gentili earlier, but a closer look.
Yeah. Sal Gentili.
Shout out, closer look. I'm in awe of what Sal does.
It's nuts. And, Sal came from cable news. And I think because of that, he writes in a way his approach is different. And he's a great comedy writer as well. But his approach is different than how you would write a sketch where you like establish a premise and then you build in beats. He writes to make a case. And so he's like, there's a thesis statement, and then there's a lot of supporting evidence, and then there's a conclusion. And, we started our show, there was nobody thought what an online audience wanted was a 12 to 15 minute long form piece about the news. And yet, that has always been the most engagement we've had as a show. And I think part of it is it's not just a series of jokes about something. It is this realization of like, oh, the writer of this piece wants us to understand how we as a show feel about things. And, you could agree or disagree with us, but I don't, I challenge anybody to say that our process is lazy because he just puts so much of himself into every piece.
Oh, it's so amazingly researched and just.
And I should say, like, because you mentioned the research, like, you know, Sal's been doing this from the very beginning with this incredible producer of ours, Emily Aratis, and the two of them have this incredible relationship where they drive each other crazy, and yet they, you know, only the two of them, they're the only two that sort of understand how it has to come together, and I'm just so lucky to have them both.
Well, let's watch a little clip.
Oh, a clip.
Closer look.
A clip, there we go.
Let's take a closer look at a closer look. By the way, your Trump keeps getting better.
Yeah, sadly. I would love it to go down a notch, but so I'm glad you showed that clip because I think, you know, again, like if you saw the whole of that closer look, I do promise that like we were trying to make actual points. But also, you know, we have so much fun with that thing, which is like, then we'll just do this long run about how would he talk about this, and I just think there's, you know, again, especially now, there's this real value to like, hey, you know, we can't let the world tell us like, it's not this is very serious. It's not a time to be funny, because it is like laughing about, even when things are very bad, is the way we kind of like hold on to our humanity. And so for us, it's really important, and we're really lucky to have an audience that's joining us for that.
Yeah, I got to say one thing. I ran into you at a Golden Globes party in January, and I asked the question that I'm sure you get from everyone, which is, how can you do a show right now?
Yeah.
How can you survive this? And you actually said something that really resonated with me, and I still think about a lot. And you said basically like, maybe we have to lean in on joy.
Yes.
They can't take joy away.
Yes, that's really how I feel. And, you know, we don't have like grand conversations about tone on our show. We move really fast. But we did, I think we knew, as it dawned on us on election night, that this was going to happen again, that we couldn't be the same as we'd been. Like, it would have been like if the 5th season of a TV show was just the 1st season again. Like, we had to... And that was the thing, which was like to take that anger and basically say like, fuck you, we're still going to have a good time. Like, we're never going to sugarcoat it. Like, our show is not about like telling people like, hey, everything's cool, don't worry about it. Like, it's very much like things are not cool, they're super shitty, but also like they don't get to tell us to be sad all the time. And so that is how we're moving forward.
No, it's something I think about a lot, actually. So
I'm glad.
I think you're helping with my mental health.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. But nonetheless, it is tough times. I mean, how are you doing in terms of just, you know, navigating everything?
I bought a bunch of Trump coins, so I'm good. I'm not going to lie, I'm doing very...
Nice.
I'm doing better than I'd be doing if I didn't have our show, right? Like, we're on hiatus right now. And during hiatus, things happen that are awful, and I don't have a way to process this. And I don't have the fun of like sitting with my writing staff and trying to crack like where can we find a way to like release this negative pressure. And so like how I'm dealing with it, like the easiest part of it is doing the show. The hardest part is, I think, what all of us are going through, which is like trying to understand, you know, what, you know, I think we're all allowed to say like, so is this who we are? You know, and if so, like, how do we, you know, make sure this isn't who we permanently are? But again, when people are like, how do you do the show? I'm like, oh, I run to do the show, because that is a salve for everything.
That's good to hear, because we need your show more than ever.
Well, I need, you know, I've had this, you know, the difference of the show from when we started to now is, you know, one of the nice things people can say to me is like, you're getting us through this. And I cannot stress how much our audience is getting us through it, because otherwise we're just, again, like I'm just me and Mulaney, like just talking to ourselves, walking down the street. So, you know, that thing of when you're talking about what you feel passionate about, it makes you even more passionate when you know people are listening.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's also, going back to your writer, it's just great to be in this room where you all can kind of hash it out. And like you mentioned, Baze and your entire crew, the segments that you do, I still love Jokes Seth Can't Tell.
Yes.
Jenny
It's an incredible
Hagel,
bit.
Amber Ruffin, still. I mean, the fact that you're all are kind of together and going through this together, I'm sure also helps.
Yeah, it's a wonderful. We have all these bits that we've baked into the show that are about making ourselves more uncomfortable. We have Jokes Seth Can't Tell, where Amber is a black woman and Jenny is Puerto Rican and gay. And they both realized early on that they were writing monologue jokes that were really funny, but I kept being like, I can't do a punchline about hyper-specific observation about lesbian culture. And so Jenny was like, oh, what if we do a thing called Jokes Seth Can't Tell, where you do the setups and we do the punchlines? I'm like, great. But then it's so uncomfortable. And then Baze came up with this really great bit, which is Surprise Inspection, which is Baze collects all the worst jokes our writers write over the course of a month. And then we just, Scollins, bad guy. But then we read, it's so fun. I read jokes and again, if I did the jokes, the audience would be so mad at us. But because I start by saying, these jokes are terrible, the audience has so much fun with the game we've set up, which is our writers have written these and they don't know we're doing this. And this is my favorite Baze joke. Because again, he wrote the setup, which is our writers don't know we're doing this, and because they don't watch the show, they'll never know we did it.
I was going to ask you if you have any favorite bad jokes from your writers, and at some point do some of them turn around?
I don't know. Good? Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you this. Nothing makes my butthole clench more than when I see a 106-year-old woman died. Because then I'm like, well, fucking Scollins is going to write a joke about that. Again, it's always it's always a punchline and get this, it was a skydiving accident. I'm like, Scollins, that's a real person.
It's like going back to 30 Rock. There's always a Lutz, right?
There's always we actually have a Lutz.
Yeah, there is a real Lutz.
You know the Lutz on 30 Rock? He's also named Lutz, and he works for me now. And he's a dear friend.
That's... and of course, you mentioned Corrections, which has become a favorite.
Yeah.
It sounds like something you look forward to almost the most.
It's really fun. There was that weird thing where for a year we did the show in the studio with no audience, and I just started doing comedy for the crew. And I think that the people who are watching at home, they were inside jokes, but if you make enough inside jokes, people at home kind of get the inside jokes. And so it is a very fun thing for people who, I don't know, it's so funny in this day and age where all anybody says about social media is that it's a cesspool of bad actors. I'm just going to go on the record and say, I think the YouTube section of Late Night with Seth Meyers is a lot of lovely people. And we've built this thing that you're not supposed to be able to put together. And I look forward to it every week. It's so funny, when I walk out to do the actual show on Thursday, I'm literally only an hour until Corrections.
And you've become the foremost expert on Lego.
Well, that's why these fucking assholes started this thing. I said, my kids are always leaving their Legos out. And they were like, it's not Legos, it's Lego bricks, not blocks, because I said blocks and they're like, no.
Oh, they're bricks, yeah.
Just psychopaths. And again, if it was a kid telling me, I'd be like, all right, you're the child. But these are adults being like, buddy. And I'm like, you're the one playing with Lego.
And the other thing about Lego is they demand that you capitalize Lego. L-E-G-O should be in all caps.
I'm fine with that. I'm just going to say Legos. I'm not going to tell my kid, clean up your Lego bricks. Clean up your Lego.
No, it's awkward. It's
awful.
Awkward. All right, let's watch a clip from Corrections.
A Corrections clip. With no context. This will be interesting.
Exactly. Let's see what it is.
There you have it. That's a taste of what Corrections is.
Little taste. Speaking of Shoemaker, by the way, so when I saw the two of you the other night, and I asked him to send me a question for you. So this is directly from executive producer Mike Shoemaker.
All right, I'm already terrified.
Why is the version of me you do in corrections a mean Bronx mobster with anger issues?
It is really fun. Like, Shoemaker is the sweetest man in the world. Truly, I think anybody who ever worked with him would say he is the best television producer you could hope for. He is incredibly empathetic and kind. He loves writers. He loves writing. And I have just chosen, and again, nobody's ever seen him. So in corrections, I'm always like, and then Shoemaker comes out, I was like, hey, give it out. And people now, when they meet him, are like, oh, I thought you were going to be an asshole.
It's hysterical because Shoemaker, you're right, is like the
He's the
nicest,
nicest
sweetest,
person in the world.
most unassuming guy. So we are now going to open it up for questions. There are mics on both sides of the aisle. So if you have a question for the one and only Seth Meyers, line up. And so in the meantime, you did Kimmel the other night.
I did Jimmy Kimmel, yeah.
So when are we going to bring back the late night wars?
I know,
We
it's
talk
such a
about
bummer.
this all
I feel
the
so
time.
bad for Bill Carter.
Actually, I hate the fact that you guys are so nice
No,
to
we
each
get
other
along.
now.
Fire away.
Yeah, my question is, you want to go out for dinner with my family?
That's so nice of you to ask. Thank you for asking. And I would, but I'm going to go do an improv show. Let's go over there.
Hi, Seth. Thank you so much for coming. My question is there a Weekend Update character you wish you got to interact with more?
In real life, God, they're all such maniacs. I will say that I know this is kind of a pat answer. I would love, and the thing about SNL 50 as well was it felt like the last time. You know what I mean? Like when SNL 40 ended, I think all of us thought, oh my God, 50 is going to be nuts. And then this year, like nobody's talking about 60 because it just seems too far in the future. And, but to talk to Stefan one more time would be, because it was the only Weekend Update. When he rolled out, like everyone in the audience was like, and it was a really special thing. It was a very cool thing to be a part of.
Thank you.
Yeah, you notice, speaking of SNL 50, I didn't ask you this question, but there is a very short list of people who always come up to take over SNL.
We have you missed this question.
Yeah, get back in line.
Yeah.
All right, so hi, my name is Xander Quation. I'm a grad student at the UT Moody School of Communication. And strap in, folks, this might take a second. So my thesis is on comedy as a necessary form of communication and an effective catalyst for social and political change.
Wrap it up.
I'm getting there. Keep your shirt on. So for my project, I've been interviewing comedy writers and performers for my paper and a short documentary. So while it's not a dinner date as proposed previously, I'd love to add you and your writers to my research. So who can I get in touch with to make that happen?
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
All right. I'll get you a name.
All right.
Yeah, but I'm not going to say it so everybody has it.
All right. My people will get in touch with you.
Where are you going to be sitting? Where are you?
Right back here.
All right, gotcha. I'll get you a name. All right.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Wow. Wow. Again, thank you so much for coming tonight. I am a fan of your brother, and I really appreciate
We tried to have him here tonight.
Yeah.
He couldn't make it. Seth was available.
Cut his mic.
Well, I really like the chemistry that y'all two have together. And it's like, what was that like to include him into this thing that you were making?
Well, so yeah, my brother and I have a podcast called Family Trips, and we had tried. Again, we worked together in Amsterdam, and he's in the business and I'm in the business, and we tried to write things over the years, and we kind of found we're actually, our creative process is very different. But the great thing about the podcast is we just get to be ourselves. And we've always been great brothers, great friends. And so great brothers, great friends aren't necessarily great co-writers, but the podcast has been the most lovely thing in the world. And also, I think in general, a lot's been written recently about like how bad men are at friendships past a certain age. And so I think that's true of brothers as well. And I literally mean this when I say any man over 40 should just start a podcast. And I know most of them have. But for those who haven't, like, because again, now I get together with my brother once a week. And, part of the fun of the podcast, obviously talking to the guests, but like we have 15 minutes just like catch up on our lives. And so I haven't called my brother in 2 years because I'm like, we got a podcast and we'll save it for the podcast. But thank you for saying that. It's brought a lot of joy into our lives as well.
I'm happy for both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there.
Hi. I am also a podcast question.
Great.
Quaid Army.
Righteous kill.
Yes. I'm wondering how you feel about that being the Lonely Island pod followers.
It's the best. I mean, so,
I know you hated that sketch, so that's why.
I did hate that sketch, but the other podcast I do is with the Lonely Island, which is Andy Samberg and Akiva Schaffer and Jorma Taccone, and they're, three of my oldest friends. We never talk, and now we have a podcast, and we talk once a week, and the only downside is that Andy Samberg hates podcasts, and... but it's so funny, like organically this thing came up, which is we call our listeners Quaid Army. And then we just decided on the podcast that the response when someone says Quaid Army is righteous kill. And over the course of a week, I cannot tell you how many times it happens where I'm just like walking down the street with my kids and someone's like Quaid Army. I'm like, righteous kill. And they're like, what just happened? I'm like, don't worry about it. And we've actually been talking about it because one of the things is, for us, that podcast is every one of us has like 2 jobs before we get to that podcast. And so it's been really frustrating to schedule it. And I think it speaks to like the heart of those 3 guys that the amount we're like, I'd stop doing it, but the Quaid Army.
Exactly.
And so,
we love the chaos.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi there.
Hi. Okay, I don't have a podcast question, but I am wondering, are we ever going to see the glory that is Documentary Now again?
Thank you for asking about Documentary Now. Maybe of everything I've ever worked on, this show I'm proudest of. Documentary Now, for those of you who don't know, and based on the ratings, most of you. Is available to stream on Netflix. Documentary Now is Bill Hader, Fred Armisen, and I, and then over the years, Mulaney joined us, but is a hyper-specific documentary parody show. And the great thing about it, and why I think I love it more than anything, is it just ages really well because it was already out of date. Like, it wasn't like there was a better time to do a Grey Gardens parody. And so we'd love to do it again. We did 4 seasons, and IFC was an incredible partner, but the problem is like those are like barely channels anymore.
Right.
And so I think if we all found time to do it, it's a little bit the same problem of the Lonely Island podcast. Like everybody's got something else to do, right? Like Bill, one of the reasons Bill wasn't in the second 2 seasons was like the best reason ever. He was doing Barry. So would we like to do more? We would. And one of the nice things is, I think, again, 4 or 5 times a year, an actor that you cannot believe saw it will say to you, like, I'd love to do an episode of documentary. And that's when we're like, we got to fucking do more, like, if this person wants to. But thank you for asking about it.
Speaking of shows that you and Shoemaker produced, AP Bio suddenly had like a new
AP
life
Bio. Again, we have very little to do with it. Our great friend Mike O'Brien is the king of AP Bio, and it was a show that found its way onto Netflix after being on NBC for 2 seasons and Peacock for 2 seasons, and everybody now is finding it. And I highly recommend if you like shows like The Office or The Good Place. It's a wonderful show.
Great show.
Yep.
Hi, Seth.
Hi.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I really love your interview style. I feel like you're very compassionate and sensitive with your guests. I especially like your interview with Elliot Page a lot. I just think it's just so compassionate. And I'm curious, what's your philosophy behind what makes a great interview?
I think reps are so important as a talk show host, and the more guests you have, the more you realize they all come in different shapes and sizes. And some guests need you a lot. They want the connection with you and they lean forward and you're just talking to them and they want to pretend nobody's watching. And other guests, I won't name names, Martin Short, they literally barely look at you. They're just, and that's so fun too. And so in general, I try not to think, I don't want my guests to come and think like, what kind of guest does Seth Meyers want? I want to approach it like, what kind of host does this guest need? Because if you can be a different host for different people, I feel like that makes the show better. And also makes the show more interesting for me. Like that it's a little bit like going back to your improv roots, which is like, what does my scene partner need? And the longer I do the show, I think the faster I can clock it in the body of the interview. So thank you for asking.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm realizing more and more as I stand here that you might have answered this already and I hadn't heard it, but I was watching this new documentary on Netflix about Osama bin Laden, like them capturing him, and they talk about you in the last episode of it. And I kind of thought they were throwing shade on you. So I was wondering if you'd seen it and what you thought about it.
So for those who don't know the context, he was a dear friend. And I know, and you guys are going to focus on whatever one thing. I actually don't know that, and I'm fascinated.
Yeah. I don't want to ruin your day, but they're and this comedian was talking. I don't know.
Well, I was doing the White House Correspondents' Dinner the night where things turned. But I mean, it's a funny thing to have historical context too. The other crazy thing, and will sound like a joke and is not a joke, played him on SNL. I was the blue-eyed Osama bin Laden. It was a sketch where there was all the jokes. I think Jim Downey wrote it, and all the jokes were in the VO of the translation. But my job was just to stand and be like. I mean, I have to stop talking before this gets more offensive. But I was just mumbling while they had a VO.
That may be the best IMDb line ever.
Yeah. When they're his impressions, John Kerry, Anderson Cooper, Osama bin Laden. No one ever asked me to do my bin Laden. But thank you for alerting me to the fact that I'm getting shade in the bin Laden documentary. Yeah. It's funny that somebody's watched it is Osama bin Laden came off badly in the doc, but you know who really did? You know what I really feel worse about?
I just thought...
Hi.
I also saw you in the bin Laden documentary last night.
Who's this audience that loves comedy and bin Laden documentaries?
By the way, I was going to say FYC. This is
FYC. I also look for me in guest actor in documentary.
My question was, I recently listened to Amy Poehler's Good Hang podcast, which I heard you on, and I listened to her memoir, which you were also in. And she mentioned that you two worked on SNL together around the same time. She said September 29, 2001, which happens to be the day I was born.
Oh, wow.
So I'm not sure if that was your first day, but I was curious if you had any funny stories about your first day at SNL.
It was, that was our first show was September 29th for sure. My first day was August 20th. And again, not to keep bringing it back to my old doc pal, but if you're doing the math, that was 2001. So I moved to New York City, and then 3 weeks later, I was again, he's an old friend. It was a prank. No, but, so a funny story is I don't really have funny, but I will say it was a crazy thing. We all worked at SNL. We were all new. And then, this world-shattering event happened that was obviously, its epicenter was New York City. And, I remember Amy used to always say it was these were the people you knew when the aliens landed. That's what it felt like. The whole world felt upside down. And, we were just really lucky to have each other. I would like to think we would all be as close if that hadn't happened, but the closeness we had, which was we all were just trying to figure out not just hey, everything's gonna be okay, but also everything's gonna be okay. Also, we're doing a comedy show, blocks away. And so, with that said, in the same way we do the show now with Joy, it was the same feeling then. Which is nobody wants to watch a comedy show where everybody's dragging their feet and saying all hope is lost. And, I do think when you go through difficult times, I'm lucky to be able to go back and be oh, when it started for me, it was as bad as we had ever thought it was. And we came out of it. And so I think that sometimes gives optimism. So, and also a happy birthday.
It was the day I was born. Lorne, and I do love telling people, hey, do you want to watch September 29th SNL show? No one cares, but I do. So.
I will say I have, there's this, do you know the name Ken Among? He was like the line producer at SNL for a long time. And he had this wonderful tradition, which is when you did your last SNL, he would frame the ticket, because they give tickets to people when they go to the show that has the host and musical guests. They look like old school theater tickets. And he would frame your first show and their last show. And everybody keeps it in their office. And so Melissa McCarthy, Imagine Dragons, Reese Witherspoon, and Alicia Keys. That is the arc of my time. Hi there.
Hi, Seth. Hi, I'm with a podcast, Boss Ladies on the Record.
Hi, Boss Ladies on the Record.
So I was gonna ask, who was the biggest boss lady that could handle her liquor on day drinking? Who you thought?
Rihanna.
Rihanna.
I mean, there's no close second. I remember when it was over, I went home and fell asleep in the foyer of my apartment building. And like, she was definitely on her way out. Like, it had been like, I was like, this is the end of times. And she was like, oh, I thought we were pre-gaming. Hi there.
Hi. I watch late night and corrections every night before I go to bed.
Thank you.
And it's really nice to fall asleep after laughing and having better dreams when I'm not doom scrolling. But this means that I end up having a lot of dreams about you.
Yeah. There's a cost. Everything has a cost.
It's nothing salacious. I'm usually at your house having dinner with you and your family.
I'm going to blow your mind. I have the same dream. Keep going. I knew you looked familiar. We love having you.
You stepped on my punchline.
Oh, no.
Or you stole it. Yeah, I was just going to ask if you had the same dream.
Yeah, well, sorry. Look, when you're with a really good improviser, I'm going to get ahead of you. Look, you know what? You did your job. You provided a really nice setup. It's still your laugh. I still give you the laugh. Thank you.
Hello, Seth.
Hi.
So SNL has been on for 50 years.
Yeah.
Lorne Michaels has been on for 40-ish of those years.
Yeah.
The end might be coming soon. I know this question was posed earlier. At the SNL 50 writers room, it kind of seemed like the Hunger Games of potential future writer or future heads of SNL. So
yeah.
Just your thoughts on my statement and...
This is my assistant, by the way. Like to introduce him.
I don't know. I kind of like him. He's pushy, and he obviously has a plan. I think it should be you.
He's going places.
I think you should take over for Lorne.
Give me if you have his number, I'll take it.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it to that guy. Yeah. Hi.
Hey, Seth. So I have just a bit of a different question. My son is trying to break in to be the writers today. So for that young generation, what bit of advice would you give them? How do they?
I don't know. I can't.
Today.
I can't give good advice on like how to break in because it's like different for everybody. But I will say, young writers should hang out with other young writers for the sole purpose of being in a community of people where they can read their writing out loud. Because I think especially comedy writing, when you write it, you just think to yourself, oh my God, this is so funny, this is so great. And it's only in reading it to other people that what you always realize is it should be shorter. Mm-hmm. And once you realize that, and you can sort of percolate ideas with other people who want to do what you're doing. Like as far as how you break in, like there's a million different ways and no one person can point you to that entry door. But, the thing I would say is like use the time that before you're in, use the time when you're out to like find a world of people that want to do the same thing.
Thank you.
So unfortunately, we only have time for one more question. No pressure.
All right. Knock it out. I apologize.
Okay. Then I will keep it to one question.
Great.
And that one question is, it sounded from earlier in your conversation that late night kind of came out of nowhere. What had been your plan for your future that was interrupted so politely with late night?
Great question. One, I was perfectly satisfied being at SNL. And I do think to the point that I'm relieved that I got offered late night because I think I would have overstayed my welcome. Like I was so comfortable there. And I did the thing I never thought I'd be able to do, which is I had found a place of comfort at a show that I had started at with so much discomfort. And so I think I could have lived in that longer than was appropriate. The other thing I was trying to do was write screenplays, and this is how badly it was going. I had been paid to write a screenplay, and I was just like, work on this first draft, and it was just going nowhere. And I remember when my agent called and was like, this is real. You're going to host late night. My first thought was, oh, fuck yes, I don't have to finish the screenplay. I don't have to finish the screenplay. Oh my God, and that, by the way, that's a writer's life. Like, nothing is better when they're like, guess what? You don't have to write it. You're like, oh my God. Like, late night was just the cherry on top. Thank you. This was wonderful. Really. By the way, I'm going to say something. The organizers promised me, because we were like backstage. We're like, is this a good crowd for questions? Because there are places, Comic-Con.
Just call it.
And they said, no, these are good questions. Those are great questions. You guys came through. You proved the organizers right.
Austin, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in the crowd, the one and only Seth Meyers.
Thank you, Austin.